Warning: the following presentation may be disturbing or triggering to some viewers. All information on this channel is provided by the local news and is public to all viewers for your own research. Viewer discretion is advised.
Wagwan, everybody. Welcome to our next episode of Talk the Things podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the next true crime story, and this story is going to be dealing with some younger people, with minors. I'm not trying to say the word, baby, because you two might be extra and all them stuff. So we're dealing with a really young person, and if you can't handle them type of stories and these type of cases, I suggest that you come off and watch one of our other stories. We have enough stories on here that you can watch. But we're going to be talking about a person or a Baby that went by the name of Jaden Bernard. He was 1 year and about 6 months at the time of the story. He was born on September 20th of 2007. So we're going back to about 2008, 9 around those times. And he was born in Etobicoke General Hospital. So that's out there in the West. So the name we're going to give his parents in the story are Mr. Wilson and Julie. Now, both of them had two kids on their own. So Julie had two of her own kids and Mr. Wilson have two of his own kids before they wound up having Jaden. So Jaden had four siblings in total. And I believe that they lived in Mississauga. I can't find nowhere saying for sure where they live, but they worked in Mississauga. And this case happens majority in Peel region, even though he was born in the West. But Mr. Wilson and Julie, I want to give you guys a little backstory from what we have of them and how they met or whatever. And that would have been around 2001, between 2001 and 2003, and was in a 4 year relationship by the time that Jaden was born. Now, after Jaden was born, life's good for the both of them, and they even ended up bringing Jaden back to Jamaica to go meet Mr. Wilson's father and mom. So his parents, they brought him to Jamaica to go meet his grandparents. But I want to switch up the story a little bit now because I'm sure you guys were never expecting to hear something like this. But Mr. Wilson was already married for 19 years to Mrs. Wilson. And Mrs. Wilson worked as what do you call it? What do you call those baby doctors? I forgot the name. It's like a big long name, but it was in the hospital actually. So she dealt with babies in the hospital or young kids. And in July of 2008, right, Mrs. Wilson was just out home, I believe, going through her stuff when she ended up finding a christening certificate. Now, the certificate had the same middle name as Mr. Wilson, but it had a different last name. So she calls her husband now. She calls Mr. Wilson at work and says, who's this baby? What name is this? Who is Jaden? And he wound up confessing over the phone, saying that, that's his son. And he had a relationship, an affair, a 4 year affair with this lady that he met at work, which was Julie. Now, remember, they say that they've only been, it said between 4 to 6 years that they were together in this relationship, Julie and Mr. Wilson. And remember, they met at work. It looked like Mr. Wilson was like Julie's supervisor or something like that. Can't be too sure. But I remember I said that they met around between the times of 2001 to 2003. Now, he even brought the baby to Jamaica to go meet his parents. All this time, this man is married. At the time of the case, was married for 19 years. And I believe they're still married to this day. So after Miss Wilson called Mr. Wilson and was, asking him about who this baby was, and Mr. Wilson confessed and said a whole affair and stuff, he winds up calling Julie and telling Julie what happened. So even though that Julie knew now that the wife, Miss Wilson, knew about the whole affair and the baby and stuff, he still took good care of the baby, really good care. He even registered the baby into the daycare that was at the bottom of the building that him and Julie worked at. He brought the baby to doctor appointment, was taking care of the baby financially, spent a lot of time with the baby because remember, Miss Wilson she works as some type of nurse in the hospital, which is a lot of hours. So she's barely home enough of the time, which was probably even how this was allowed to spark up this whole affair between Mr. Wilson and Julie. But the relationship was so good between Jaden, the dad, Mr. Wilson, and even Miss Wilson, that Miss Wilson started to invite Jaden over to the house to spend time, with the father. She says that she don't think that she should separate the dad from the kid because the kid is an innocent baby, even though she don't really to agree with how the baby was brought here. Obviously, she's gonna have her ways. She said that the baby was innocent and that she loved babies. So her having the baby come over, even though it's not hers, it's basically her bastard child, if that's what you can call it. Would that be her bastard child? She was still taking care of it. She was still loving it almost as if it was hers. Now, this is where the problem came in. This one, Julie started to feel kind of pissed off because, as a side thing, I'm guessing you are expecting to come in, give the man a baby, take him out his old boring marriage, and he's going to come over and live with you. But this wasn't the case with this one. The baby was accepted by the wife, which never, barely ever happens, right? But it happened in this situation. And this is when now Julie felt like, bro, then almost this is what I feel like she felt like. She probably felt like, what did I do all this for? If I gave him the baby and all these things and he brought me to Jamaica to go meet his grandparents, and it seemed like as if, I was the new one now. But now the baby is hanging out with with the wife and the dad. This is not what I planned for. And that's what I really feel like she was feeling because I mean, I don't know. I just find that so weird. Not necessarily weird that she would be feeling some type of way that the wife is now hanging out with her son or taking care of her son, because if I know how I am, if I'm wicked enough to go try to chop a person with a baby, I'm gonna obviously think that the person is gonna be wicked to the baby, my child. But the wife didn't think like that. She didn't have that mindset. You know what I mean? She tried to make everything work with her husband. That's why she stayed. That's why she did this. But I'm trying to tell you guys all this so you guys can kind of see how Julie's mindset is starting to switch now. Now she was getting upset with the fact that Jaden was going over to Mr. and Mrs. Wilson house, to where she even called police a couple times. And I don't think nothing really happened with those police calls, but she was just making police call for saying that, they're harassing me or whatever, or they're trying to harm my son. Nothing serious. But on November 28th, 2008 was the last time Mr. and Mrs. Wilson saw Jaden ever. So I want to move into the crime now. Starting on December 8th, remember we just came off of November 28th where they last seen him, Jaden. Now, December 8th, not too long after, Mr. Wilson ended up filing for joint custody of his son. He wanted to be able to see his son like half of the time. And if it was granted, it would have started on March 12th, 2009. Now, Julie was not a fan of this at all. Like I told you guys from before, how she was starting to feel. She didn't want them. She didn't want nothing to do with them no more, right? Especially now that the wife is just with Mr. Wilson still, not mad, never left him, never nothing, and wants the baby to be around her. She's just not going with that. And on March 12th, which would have been the day before, if the judge ruled in Mr. Wilson's favor, he would have granted him to have custody. Julie told her friend that she would rather off her baby than ever do no split custody with the wife. She just was not having this at all, which is something so crazy to say, but the people then blew it off and didn't really take it serious when she said that. You know what I mean? They didn't think that they probably just saying like, she was being extra, but using it for example, just to show how against the situation she was. But the next day now on the 12th, it was granted. It was granted to him. And they were scheduled to always meet at like a McDonald's or something like that, where they can do the transaction and the baby can go spend time with whatever. They were supposed to meet at McDonald's and do it. But she never ever complied with it. She never showed up to none of the meetings, she just wasn't involved. And that's Julie I'm talking about, if you guys are getting lost. Now on the 23rd, she ended up quitting her job, the same job that her and Mr. Wilson was working at together. She ended up quitting that job. And 26th of March now, she ended up going to Home Depot, where she ended up buying some duct tape, and then she ended up buying a hose. And this was all caught on surveillance footage. But around 9:36 a.m., she drove into the parking garage of where she used to work, that same building. And she was driving around for exactly 2 hours, where at 11:36 is when she ended up finding a parking spot, and she parked there. She came out of the car. When she went to the back of the car, like around the muffler area near the exhaust, and she tie on the hose to the back of the exhaust. She gets the hose now and brings, I don't know if she put it through the door or if she put it through the window or however she put it through to get into the car, into the cabin of the car, where she had Jaden in the back seat, in the car seat, strapped in. She poked the hose in the car some way, like I'm saying now, and left the car running all day. The car was running all night. Remember, this is 11:36 in the morning when she did this. So the whole of that day, it was just carbon monoxide running in the car. The whole night, carbon monoxide running in the car. But the next morning now, at 7:51, you wouldn't believe what happened. Julie, the one that set all this up, that was in the car sitting with the baby with the carbon monoxide pumping for all those hours, winds up calling 911 and telling them the whole situation. And 911 is saying, well, you need to go start CPR on your son right now. And she's saying, well, there's no point. My son's DEAD, and she's not doing it. She's not doing no CPR. And in that time, she also wrote two sewer notes. I have to say sewer. You know what I'm trying to say. Sewer, sewer, sewer. We can't say the actual word on YouTube now. But she wrote two final notes and had that in the car, where police also found that. Now, it wasn't enough carbon to off her. It off the baby, but it wasn't enough to off her. And you can imagine now hearing this, Mr. Wilson was in shock, of course, because that's still his son. Even though how the son was born and what the son was involved with and all those stuff, that was still his son, you know what I mean? And he was devastated when he heard the news. So she got life in prison, right? Back in 2011 is when she was sentenced. But just this February of 2025, she wound up getting granted, well, not granted parole, but they're saying that she can file for parole now to be released immediately. And a lot of people are saying Canada's such a shit place, because how could she have done something like that to the baby? And already she's coming up. But the Babylon is saying that she's all healthy in her head, and that she knows what she done, and she apologized, and she's remorseful and all these things. But I just want to say a few things before I end this episode, because I did an episode just like this a few days ago, if you guys never seen, about the Toronto love triangle that started also at work, and the man wound up stabbing her 159 times, and then she was found in a river that was near Jane and Finch. Why do people do things like this? Like, I'm trying to figure out what Julie's, I kind of explained it earlier in the podcast, where I was saying it seemed like she was, but like, I just don't get it. I still don't get it, because now the baby born, you do all that, and you do this to the baby to what? Get revenge back at Mr. Wilson. So that means that when you had him, you didn't even have him to just have. You had him to try hold down. You never really loved the baby. You just try to have him to try take away from the wife. But a lot of people are putting something out in my comment section in my other video that I was saying is actually really true, and I wanted to get into it myself because I didn't really remember about it when I was recording it. But we come from the island, Jamaica, and wherever these people come from. The last case was a St. Vincent case, but the man did come from Jamaica. And this time, it looks like both people come from Jamaica in this case. And some of these people will do what we call obia, love spell, voodoo. And when you do a love spell, if you know nothing about spirituality and those things, love spells are the worst thing to do, because it always comes back and hurts the person who put the spell over the next person. So yes, if you work the obel, you're gonna get the baby. You're gonna get the couple years with the man, but look how it ends. The baby dead, you gone mad, go. And a lot of times it's like they go crazy and do these things. You know what I mean? Like in the other case, the man stabbed her 159 times, which seems excessive. But what if the spirit backfired on the girl, and then made the man go mad and kill the girl? This is how spirituality works. Same thing with now. This can be a Miss Wilson. She could probably be the biggest church lady, and she don't play with God, and God has her back. So when the wife now, not the wife, excuse me, when Julie comes out of nowhere trying to destroy the wife's marriage, and the wife is just sitting back like, what is this? The wife didn't even have to lift finger. The wife took the baby in, and look what happened. It's them that got mashed up, not the wife. The wife was just here, and they set up against the wife. And the wife is the one that never went to jail. The wife never lost no kids. The wife never had none of those things. So I don't know, bro. You guys have to let me know what you think about this case. Do you think it was spirituality? Do you think it was voodoo? Do you think it was a curse that was put on them and the curse backfire? Do you think that it was mental illness and she wasn't thinking correctly to go, try off herself and her kid, but only wind up offing the kid? Or do you feel like she was just plain simple wicked, knew what she was doing, and she doesn't care? She doesn't care. So you guys let me know your thoughts, and we will talk next time on Talk the Things podcast. Yeah, I'm a pretty little Barbie.